Imagine this. You drop a naked human, no tools, no clothes, no tech, right onto an alien jungle world and expect him to just roll over and die. That's not even science, that's just camping, if you ask a human. But to the rest of the galaxy, it's the spectacle of the year. Inside the broadcasting chamber of the Galactic Broadcast League, chaos reigns. Picture 100 different alien species, some with mandibles that click, others with gills that flare, and more than a few humming tentacles jittering with anticipation. The event, the most anticipated reality show this side of the nebula, Trial of Species, 08. The rules are brutal and simple, one representative per species. No gear, no outside help, no special treatment. Each contestant is dropped into a neutral, hyper-lethal, death class, world. Last creature standing wins resource sovereignty for their entire civilization. Stakes, you could say, are cosmic. Now, this cycle's wildcard is a human. Contestant ID 942H001. But you can call him Hale. The producers went with a human after hearing stories about Earth's knack for surviving anything. Resilient, resourceful, you name it. Still, no one was ready for what they got. A bald, scarred human who stepped out of the landing pod grinning, not even the tiniest bit nervous. The other contestants made an impression. Sure, the six-legged Solorn who melted straight into a cave. Drothgel's floating gas bag drifting up into the jungle canopy. The Quintari mimic who turned into a bush and then just stopped moving altogether. But Hale, he just scanned the trees, grunted, good tree density, shouldn't take more than a few hours, and started whistling, on Virex 9, the most aggressively hostile jungle planet in the League's history. Virex 9 isn't your average death trap. Its dirt is laced with acid spores. Bugs bite through metal, and the heat will bake your brains right in your skull. If you don't have shelter by nightfall, you're compost. Most species arrived with freaky biological tricks, acid blood, bone armor, prehensile claws. Humans, though, they just sent Hale. By the end of day 1, the producers were sweating bullets, or whatever the mollusk equivalent is. They sat in their control spires, replaying footage again and again. Hale had already found a freshwater stream, sampled a bunch of leaves, spitting out the bad ones, chewing the good, and, oh yeah, had managed to make fire using nothing but a peeled branch and some dry plant stalks. Fire, already? One four-eyed mollusk producer muttered, tentacles trembling. Day 2. Hale's got a lean-to built from jungle fronds and vines. He's wrapped strips of bark around his feet, wove a makeshift belt, and is busy smoking strips of what looks suspiciously like lizard over his own fire. The camera drones, stealthy, silent, state-of-the-art, are now obsessed with him, while the other contestants are either hiding, bleeding, or slowly dying. Hale is clean. He even made soap. Soap? Did he just make soap? Gasped a producer, as they watched him lather up with crushed leaves. Hale's camp looks almost cozy by comparison. He's insulated his shelter with streamed clay. When a fang-riddled, four-eyed worm beast tries to ambush him in the night, he just yells, "Not today," dodges, and spears the thing in the mouth with a fire-hardened stick. Breathless, he laughs. Victory goes to the prepared. The galaxy loses its collective mind. Maybe humans are shapeshifters. Maybe he's genetically enhanced. Why does he keep talking to himself? Does he even know we're watching? Speculation explodes across every galactic newsfeed. But the truth is, he does know, and he doesn't care. He's having the time of his life. By day 3, Drothgel's floating gas bag has succumbed to a parasitic mold, and the Quintari mimic is gnawing its own limb in starvation. Hale, meanwhile, has turned his lean-to into a legitimate hut, complete with mud insulation, a smoke vent, and a rock basin to collect purified water. That evening, he sits cross-legged by the fire and addresses the drone directly. Figured y'all were watching by now. Here's your day 3 update. Got clean water, basic sanitation, a protein source, tastes like gator, if anyone's wondering, and even a decent mattress. if you count woven moss. He gestures proudly at a raised platform of sticks and vines. Luxury jungle living. Right. Scientists across the galaxy panic. They pull up every scan of human biology they can find. Nothing explains why Hale should be doing this well. High sweat rate, big calorie needs, average immune system, yet there he is, glowing with health, singing something about gumbo as he stirs fruit into a bubbling stew. He's even made primitive tools. A commentator finally cracks and asks the AI archivist if this human's had special training. The League's AI answers. Deadpan. According to records, human males aged 18 to 65 often subject themselves to self-imposed survival challenges. Many even pay to do so for recreation. The stunned silence that follows becomes a galactic legend. The head producer, barely holding it together, hisses, "So let me get this straight. This isn't a soldier or a genetic mutant. This is just a regular human." The AI confirms. Correct. Hale volunteered after learning wilderness survival would be involved. His only request was to bring his lucky flint rock. The League, of course, said no. On screen, Hale is scraping the inside of a fruit with a sharp stick. Sniffing, then smiling like he's found treasure. Soap berries, not perfect, but they'll keep the bugs down. If I can find a bitter ash plant, I'll have lye. Mix that with some fat off the worm thing. He stands, stretches, swats a three-winged insect. God, I love camping. Behind the scenes, the producers call an emergency meeting. They don't get it. This isn't survival. Hale is thriving. By the end of day 3, the scoreboard shows 2 critical contestants. One in hibernation, and Hale, carving a chair. Day 4 dawns with a surprise. As Hale digs out more clay, he unearths a dense, aromatic root bulb. He sniffs, grins, and practically dances in place. Wild garlic. Oh, you shouldn't have. In the control room, Zorvani analysts nearly choke on their nutrient slush. He's foraging better than our own bots. Mutters one. That wasn't even in the survival database. Adds another. Hale slices the root with a flaked obsidian blade. Drops it into his stew. And muses. Bit more salt and we'd have a real meal. Or maybe the sweat crust on my shirt will do in a pinch. Viewers howl with laughter. He's eating like royalty. Is that seasoning? Why are humans so at home in planetary hellscapes? By midday, Hale is on to the next project, braiding the tough stems of a jungle vine into rope. Not just any rope, actual, usable cordage. He ties loops, anchors them to trees, and sets up a small snare. By nightfall, he's caught himself a lizard rat. Dinner in a belt, he says, grinning. Got to start looking civilized or we'll forget how. While other contestants cling to life or slip into hibernation, Hale has moved on to home decor. Bundles of herbs dry by the fire. He's built a shelf, even carved a decorative spiral into a supporting beam. Psychological adaptation is dangerously high, whispers the League's lead psychologist. He's not surviving, he's flourishing. This isn't trauma management, this is homesteading. Footage shows Hale shaping a clay bowl, lining it with dried plant fibers, and letting it sun-dry before filling it with hot water. It holds herbal tea, he says to the trees. Can't beat a good brew after a hunt. By day 5, the only other active contestant tries to dig its way out of the trial grounds but crosses the boundary and gets disqualified. Now, for the first time in the show's history, a single contestant remains, not due to dumb luck or brute strength, but because nobody else can keep up. Should they end the trial? He's won, but the audience is glued to their screens, now tuning in just to see what Hale will come up with next. It's not a competition anymore, it's a live tutorial. Day 6, Hale shocks the galaxy by doing nothing. He lies back on his moss mattress, hands behind his head, humming Sweet Home Alabama. When the drone floats in, he waves. Recovery day. Gotta let the muscles heal. Then he tosses a fruit to a bird-like creature that lands nearby. That one's been visiting every morning. Must like the singing. Producers freeze. Is he domesticating wildlife? He's taming a native species. Gasps a xenobiologist. He hasn't even gone feral, he's forming bonds. Hale stretches, gets up, and decides it's time to get fancy. He digs a shallow depression, lines it with stones, and fills it with water. Primitive cistern. A producer whispers. He's building infrastructure. On day 7, Hale stands beside his finished waterpool, holding a makeshift spear, feathered fletching at one end, a sharpened tip at the other. He balances, throws, and nails a worm lizard. By day 8, Hale has scratched a calendar into a piece of bark, 7 neat lines. Now 8. Got to keep track. Days start blending when you're running a one-man civilization. Breakfast, roasted lizard, steamed nut pods, a boiled root drink. He tests everything with ritualistic precision. Sniff, rub, chew a tiny bit, wait an hour. He hasn't been sick once. Meanwhile, the League is in total disarray. Their experiment is now a masterclass in primitive engineering and psychology. We can't air another season, grumbles the head of programming. A translucent execopod. Every species will just try to copy the human. But ratings are the highest ever. Someone chirps. Fine, the execopod size. Change the show's name from Trial of Species to The Human Experiment. Back on Varex 9, Hale's camp now features a drying shelter for meat, racks for storage, a rain catch system, and ceramic pots for water. Should hold through dry spells. He tells the drone, and if you're still watching, I'm accepting suggestions for what to build next. Don't say radio, I'm sticking to the rules. The comments section loses its mind. Build a raft. Make armor. Teach the animals to form a militia. Hale just chuckles and tosses a fruit to his bird friend. You again? I'll call you Melvin. That night, he sits by the fire, whittling new spear tips, one barbed, one flat, one trident-shaped for fishing. Not just copying tools, optimizing them. The League's scientists panic. He's entering developmental progression. This is the Neolithic leap. Did he just domesticate a bird? Run a simulation? How far will he get in 30 days? But Hale isn't thinking about simulations. He's watching the stars, drawing a crude star map on his shelter wall with a piece of charcoal. Constellations are off, but that one's got a bend. Could be useful for tracking direction. And on day 9, as thunder shakes the jungle, Hale calmly pulls his supplies inside, digs a trench around his shelter, and waits out the storm sipping root tea. His structure holds. He even finds a new clay deposit after the flood. Didn't expect the storm so soon, he says, but I'll take the free water. By morning, the League convenes an emergency meeting. He's not surviving, says a council member. He's absorbing the environment. He's turning chaos into order. Another leans in, voice low. We wanted to see which species could endure. Instead, we gave a human an empty canvas. Silence. If we hadn't banned technology, what would he have built then? The question lingers. And that, my friends, is just the beginning. Part 2. On the planet, Hale is now testing the very limits of his environment. He's made a satchel from braided vines and scraps of scavenged hide. With his best spear in hand and Melvin the bird gliding from tree to tree above. He pushes deeper into the jungle, no panic. Just curiosity. Every few meters, he marks trees with quick slashes. Sometimes stacks a pile of stones for a landmark. Always paying attention to new plants, strange smells, and subtle animal trails. When he reaches a ridge and sees a vast, lush green basin below, he smiles. Looks like river country, might be good farmland. Farmland, that word, picked up by the hovering drone, sends a shock through the League's viewing core. The analysts and strategists who have been glued to their screens suddenly realize Hale isn't just trying to survive. He's starting to think about expansion. By day 10, Hale returns from his scouting expedition dragging half a tree behind him. Not a branch, a tree. Limbs stripped, bark mostly gone, the trunk lashed with braided cord and hauled over his shoulder like a champion lumberjack. He's out of breath but grinning, sweat streaking his dirt-caked skin. Gonna need a few more of these. He mutters to Melvin, "Figure I can do one a day." From above, the camera drones catch the beginnings of a structure. At first, it looks like maybe he's building a defensive wall, but as the days roll on, it becomes clear he's constructing something longer, lower, more deliberate. He carves cross beams, rounds the ends, seals the inside with waterproof clay and tree sap. It's a boat, a canoe, long and sturdy, wide enough for supplies, with sides high enough to handle a river's current. Panic ripples through the League's Xenostrategic Committee. Emergency meetings erupt into a storm of speculation. Is he trying to escape the test area? No. Look at his food stores. His camp's stable. He's got resources. This isn't a breakout. It's an expansion. The consensus is chilling. Hale isn't running. He's projecting, claiming new territory, thinking beyond the contest itself. By day 14, Hale is ready. He launches the canoe into the slow-moving river that snakes through the basin below his camp. Melvin perches at the front, looking almost like a captain's figurehead, and Hale paddles with a broad-leaf paddle carved by his own hand. His arms move in practiced, steady rhythm. He explores as he goes, catching edible fish with a trident-tipped spear, collecting tubers and roots along the banks, even discovering a moss that foams when rubbed, another soap substitute. Good backup. He nods to himself. He doesn't just take, he gives back. When he collects seeds or tubers, he digs little furrows in the wet earth, presses seeds in, covers them gently. Leave it better than you found it, he says quietly, not to the drone, not to the galaxy, just to himself and Melvin. Back at camp, things are changing fast. The shelter now has a reinforced roof, new drying racks, smoke vents in the drying house, and a stone-lined trench to stop erosion when the next big rain hits. He even builds a small footbridge over the streams so he doesn't have to wade through mud every morning for water. Melvin seems to have adopted the camp as his own territory, perching on beams, foraging for insects in the grass, and chirping along as Hale works. And then comes the moment that sends the galaxy into a frenzy. On day 17, Hale carves something into the bark of a tree at the entrance to his camp. The drone zooms in and broadcasts the image everywhere. Colony 1, bold, unmistakable, burned into the wood with a hot stick. The silence that falls across every council chamber, war room, and media hub in the galaxy is absolute. He hasn't just survived, he's claimed the planet for his species. Immediately, the League's board votes to end the trial. Not for Hale's safety. He's in no danger at all. Not because of public outcry. If anything, the galaxy's audience is more invested than ever. But because the premise of the show has collapsed. The idea was to see which species could endure a death-class world with no technology. Instead, in the absence of gadgets, shortcuts, and pre-built systems, a human just adapted, improvised, and evolved. When the recall signal finally flashes, a beacon blinking red above his camp, Hale looks up from whittling a new tool. He sighs, rubs his chin, and calls out, "Time to go." Melvin, the bird, squawks in answer, fluttering from branch to branch. Hale stands, surveys his camp, his home. Really? Then nods once. Firm, he packs his satchel, grabs his knife, a sealed pot of seeds, and one spear. He pats the canoe, leaves it tied for anyone who might come next, and carves one last mark into a stone by the fire pit. Human was here. The drone follows him to the extraction site. He waits, hands on hips, looking out into the jungle that, in less than 3 weeks, he's not only survived, but shaped. When the transport pod descends, lights blinking and doors sliding open, Hale glances up and grins. "If you'd let me bring a multi-tool," he tells the drone, "I'd have had electricity by now." That one line doesn't just break the galactic internet. It becomes an anthem, printed on mugs, T-shirts, survival gear from Alder Prime to the Vashari Fringe. It's quoted by kids in alien schools. Human schools start adding primitive survival skills to the curriculum, just in case. But it isn't just the line, it's the legacy. When Hale returns to Earth, It's not as a failed experiment or a broken survivor. He's a legend, not because he built a canoe or made soap, but because he did all of it without a single piece of tech, and never once stopped thriving. Behind the scenes, the League quietly rewrites every rule for future contests. Humans are never again invited to zero-tech survival events, not because it's unfair to them, but because it's unfair to everyone else. Meanwhile, on Virex 9, the jungle goes right on growing. Colony 1 stands undisturbed, untouched. Months later, a League survey team stumbles across it, and what they find is remarkable. Hale's replanted crops are thriving. His traps still function, and his shelters are perfectly intact. Melvin, it seems, has stuck around, still watching, still singing, still waiting. Part 3. Long after the Galactic Broadcast League declared the trial of species officially concluded, the story of Hale didn't just fade into the noise of the galactic media cycle, it grew, mutated, and flourished across cultures, generations, even entire worlds. Clips from his time on Virex 9 went viral on thousands of networks. Edits circulated of him roasting lizard meat, whistling to Melvin, improvising tools, and, most importantly, grinning at disaster like it was just another Tuesday. Commentators dissected every move. Scientists argued about his risk calculations and how humans could possibly enjoy hardship. Kids from star systems that had never even seen a tree started making Colony 1 shelters in VR parks and backyards. Hale's words, especially that iconic last line about building electricity with a multi-tool, became something more than a meme. It was a challenge, a philosophy. Meanwhile, the League's own ecosystem was never the same. The trial of species was over, at least, as anyone once knew it. With the premise shattered, sponsors and viewers didn't lose interest. If anything, they became more obsessed. Demand skyrocketed for the human experiment, retrospectives, analysis, and spin-offs. Primitive Genius, how far would you get? Zero Tech, Human Edition. There were even dramatizations, actors in prosthetics playing Hale, fake Melvins on their shoulders, entire lines of merchandise themed around survival, optimism, and cleverness in the face of the unknown. But perhaps the biggest shift came from within the scientific community itself. Universities, think tanks, even military academies across the League revised their understanding of intelligent adaptation. Where once they'd measured species by their raw power, natural weaponry, or ability to endure pain, now there was a new variable, the human niche. Not just survival, but turning adversity into an advantage, finding not just a way to live, but a way to thrive, to innovate, to make even the harshest place a home. Researchers wrote endless papers on the Hale effect. The phrase, "leave it better than you found it," was inscribed on plaques and memorial stones, repeated in school assemblies and used in political speeches. Some worlds even declared their own Colony 1 Day, celebrating ingenuity and resilience. And all the while, Hale himself kept mostly to the shadows. He refused celebrity interviews, brushed off endorsement deals, and instead went camping in Earth's wild places, though now, always with Melvin's descendants, the little blue bird's offspring, flitting around his campsites. He sometimes sent cryptic video logs to friends, trying for 2 canoes this year. Figure I'll teach some kids how to smoke fish. Found a new patch of wild garlic. Not as good as the original. But who's complaining? Every now and then, a League anthropologist or biologist would reach out, hoping to capture his thoughts or record his techniques for posterity. Usually, Hale just shrugged, said, "You can't teach fun, you just gotta get out there and figure it out," and left it at that. But the true, lasting mark of the whole ordeal was what the League found when they finally sent a survey team back to Virex 9. Years later, Colony 1 was still there, tucked into the edge of the forest and half reclaimed by the jungle. The main shelter was faded, but intact. The drying house still stood, though its racks were overgrown with moss and vines. The rain-catched trench, now lined with wildflowers, still diverted water neatly from what was left of the fire pit. More striking, though, were the signs of life. Melvin's descendants still nested in the beams and branches nearby, occasionally darting out to chase away larger predators. The edible plants Hale had seeded had spread, clustering along the stream's edge. Some had even hybridized with native species, making for a new ecosystem, one that provided food, shelter, and even a little color among the endless green. Most haunting, perhaps, was that carved stone by the old firepit. Weathered but readable, human was here. The scientists catalogued everything, took soil samples, and tried to model the ecological impact of one man's creativity. In the end, what they found was simple. One human, given nothing but his wits and will, had managed not just to survive, but to plant something that would outlast him, a touch of humanity in the wild. An echo of home in a galaxy that, up until then, had thought of Earth's people as fragile, fleeting, and fundamentally unspectacular. Back home, the ripples kept spreading. More and more people, alien and human alike, began to see the value in creativity, adaptability, and leaving every patch of ground, literal or metaphorical, a little better than they found it. Colony 1 clubs sprung up on distant worlds. What would Hale do? Became both a punchline and a quiet bit of wisdom for those in a tight spot. And sometimes, on quiet nights, somewhere in the forests of Earth, you might catch the faintest sound of whistling, a campfire, and, if you're lucky, a glimpse of a grinning man, turning the worst conditions into a kind of playground. Maybe he's whittling a new tool. Maybe he's teaching someone how to make herbal tea out of nearly anything. And maybe, just maybe, he's looking up at the stars, remembering a time when the whole galaxy watched him build a home from nothing at all. In the end, that's the real story, not about hardship or struggle, but about possibility, about what happens when you take away all the easy answers and let human curiosity, stubbornness, and hope do the rest. Because on Virex 9, as the legends now say, one human showed the stars what thriving really means.